We're talking about starting an LLC in Delaware, and what you can see behind me here is a checklist that we're going to be running through to do exactly that. So we're going to get to this checklist, but before we get to that, I want to talk about something called the LLC dumpster fire. What that is when you don't understand terms such as piercing the corporate veil, commingling funds, registered agents, or pass-through taxation. Or maybe it's after the LLC formation, you're not familiar with how the LLC renewal process works, or you don't get the proper business licenses and permits. Now, what happens is if you don't understand the full picture of setting up your LLC within the state of Delaware, there could be a lot of cracks that can lead to tens of thousands of dollars in legal damages down the line. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to zoom out a little bit. And we're actually going to talk about what an LLC does for your business. And then when we zoom out, it's going to allow us to zoom in a little bit and make sure that you get your LLC set up correctly. So first things first, we're going to talk about the fact that an LLC offers limited liability protection and pass-through taxation. Let's look at this as an example of owning a coffee shop without an LLC. Here's what that looks like. You have the business owner in the center. Perhaps it's a sole proprietorship. And on the left-hand side, you have their personal home, car, and bank account. On the right-hand side, you have their business assets, the business bank account, point of sale, the actual physical location, espresso machine, lights. Everything is directly connected back to the business owner, and that creates a lot of inherent liability. Now, in the example of owning an LLC that owns the coffee shop, it looks very different. Now what we have is the business owner on the left-hand side with their personal assets, and on the right-hand side, it's the Acme Coffee LLC, we're calling it. So this LLC has all those assets underneath it. The important part here is the red line in the middle. That line is something called the corporate veil. And what it does is it draws a division between your personal and business assets. Now, you may recall earlier in the video, we talked about piercing the corporate veil. We're going to explain that right now through the concept of something called commingling funds. Now, what commingling funds is let's say you get your LLC set up, but you don't get a business bank account set up right away, and you operate the business through your personal bank account. So you have transactions running through your personal bank account for the business. What that is commingling funds. And if you were to be sued, let's say somebody gets hurt at your coffee shop and they hire an attorney. That attorney's job is to find cracks in your LLC. If they figure out that you've been commingling funds and they present that evidence to a judge, and the judge agrees with them and grants them permission to pierce the corporate veil, what ends up happening is this division between your personal and business assets dissolves, and then they can come after not just your business assets, but your personal assets as well. So that's why you get an LLC set up, but that's why you're watching content like this so that you know things such as commingling funds, so that you know you need to get that business bank account set up right away as well. So we're going to be talking about other common pitfalls and traps of setting up your LLC in this video, and just stay with me through this series because you're going to be set up for success when you get your LLC set up. Now, next, what I want to talk about is an explanation of pass-through taxation. Pass-through taxation, what that means is, let's say Acme Coffee LLC grossed $140,000, had $90,000 of expenses, resulting in $50,000 of net income. The IRS is not taxing the LLC. That $50,000 of net income passes through, sometimes called flow-through taxation. Same kind of wording, right? You can be used interchangeably, but it's going to go into your personal tax return. So the IRS is taxing the business owner. Just wanted to make you aware of this so there's no confusion come tax time. But there is a cool thing that you can do with an LLC. It's a very flexible entity. It's part of the reason why a lot of people get started with an LLC is in the future, you can apply an S-Corp designation to your LLC to save on taxes via dividends. Now, we're not going to get into this in this video, but in the third video in this series, we're going to be talking about that. And this can save you tens of thousands of dollars in taxes in the future when your business starts to make a profit. Again, it's not just getting your LLC set up and making sure it's done correctly, but also making sure that you're aware of what it can do for you in the future as well. So why don't we get into talking about the actual checklist now of starting your LLC. Number one is that you can get this checklist for yourself. There is a QR code on the screen right now that you can scan. When you get that, it is a completely free checklist here for you. And the part of the reason you want to get this is there's a lot of cool bonuses in here. We have the glossary of terms here. I'd highly suggest watching this quick video here. You may save $200 because there's a common LLC scam that people fall for after they get their LLC set up. There's also an AI chatbot here. So this chatbot, you can ask a question such as how to start an LLC in Delaware, and it'll give you the specifics within the state and the steps you need to follow. There's also some quick keys down here, and you can do one that's how do I register an EIN, and they'll give you the steps for that. But we're actually going to discuss that in this video and explain what an EIN is for you. Also, there's a free charitable opportunity. This yearly accounting calendar will be updated every year. And a future video in this series, we're going to get into what these dates mean and why they're important for you. So there's tons and tons of resources in here that are all available for you. And this is going to continue to get better because it's set up so it makes it easy for you to own your LLC and manage it. Now, what we're going to talk about is deciding which route you should go. The state website, online LLC services, or a business attorney. For the sake of this video, we're going to go through a state site. but most likely you're outside of Delaware. And my recommendation is that you go through an online legal tool to do that, which we'll get into again in further detail. But the reason for that is basically if you're doing this from out of state, you may need to get into things such as foreign and domestic LLCs. And in the next video, we're going to cover that quite a bit. And if you're doing an out-of-state Delaware one, again, you may want to consider an online legal tool. But what we're going to do is we're going to actually go through the PDF version of the process and go through some of the things that commonly trip people up as they're setting up their LLC. So we have to decide on a business name for your LLC. The thing that's important here is that it cannot be a name that is already taken within the state database. So it needs to be a unique name, but it doesn't need to be the perfect name. The reason for that is Acme Coffee LLC. That's a terrible name for a coffee shop, but you can have something called the DBA, which is the doing business as, or it's sometimes referred to as a fictitious name that you can set up for your business that then becomes your brand name. So you could have Espresso Yourself Cafe exist underneath that LLC, and that's the brand name that people are going to be familiar with. So don't put a ton of pressure on yourself for having the perfect name. What you can see here, though, is there's a state directory link, and when you open this up, we're going to go down to Delaware, and this is going to take us to the state database. So what we're going to do is we're going to search for a limited liability company, and then entity type. We're going to say limited liability company and then entity name. So when I put in this name coffee, and I know the state website isn't great, you can see it very small on the bottom here. It says the name is not available for reservation. All right. But now if I do coffee and then just hit some keys here, let's see what we get this time. So here it says that this name is available and the cost for this reservation is $75. Do you want to reserve this name? Now, this is going to segue nicely into the next section of this video. So now that we know that coffee and a bunch of letters is available, what you'd want to do next is you want to get your LLC set up. And it says that its first step is registering your LLC name. The reason that I'm mentioning this right now is when you register an LLC name, you do not actually set up an LLC. You're just reserving that name. It's kind of like buying a domain. You don't actually have a website built. You just have a domain name. What you actually need to do is write your articles of organization and file those with the state. Again, we have a state directory list on our helpful cheat sheet here. And then what we're going to do is go to Delaware. So this first link here, formation, will take you over here. And then let's just cover a couple items on this. So the name of the limited liability company that's where you're going to put that name in there. The registered office of the limited liability company in the state of Delaware is located at and in the city, and it has this information here, and it's talking about the name of the registered agent. Now, what that is a registered agent is a third party that handles important information and documentation for your business. So let's say that with that coffee shop example that you were being sued. Well, what that registered agent is going to do is you're going to get a service of process notice. That means that you're being summoned to court. They're going to make sure that you get that information and that you're showing up and that you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's through the process. Now, the rules with this is the registered agent has to have a physical mailing address within the state of Delaware. It cannot be a P.O. box, and you must maintain that registered agent. So again, if you're doing a Delaware LLC from out of state, you're going to need to go through a registered agent service. In the next video of this series, we're actually going to talk about different LLC services that provide the registered agent for you. And one in particular will actually provide it for free for the first year. So here it's saying that the filing fee for the certificate is $110. And then also the annual taxes in the amount of $300 for the limited liability company are due June 1st of each year, the following calendar year in which the certificate formation becomes effective. So just be aware that there is ongoing fees here with setting up your LLC. But the reason a lot of people go through Delaware is it's easy, they have more privacy, and they just make it very easy, and it's friendly for business owners. So once you write your articles of organization, you sign the registered agent, you file them, and you mail it in. Of course, you can go through the state website as well, but the state website is a little bit of a pain. It's not well made. What you're wanting to do next is consider after LLC formation. Now, you can create and sign an LLC operating agreement. What this is a document that spells out who are the managers and members of the LLC. The difference between a manager and a member is somebody who owns that LLC. A manager is the person managing it. So if you're starting an LLC that you're not actually going to be operating, that's where you'd have a manager. But it'll spell out who they are, what their roles and responsibilities are, and then it'll also handle things such as like what to do if there was an exit in the company. So let's say the coffee shop example, you end up having 10 coffee shops, and then when a business partner with you wants to exit the business, how do you handle that? Well, if it's spelled out in the LLC operating agreement, you just point back to that, and that's what you do. But when things like this pop up and you don't have it spelled out, the issue is that then you're going to have to get attorneys involved. It gets very expensive and frustrating. So it is a great idea to get that LLC operating agreement set up as soon as possible. Then you want to look into setting up an EIN. There's an IRS link here on the page. What an EIN is an employment identification number. It's a way for the IRS to identify your business, kind of like a social security number, but for your business. You can apply online here. It's free to do through the IRS website, but those online legal tools will handle this for you as well, but it's an additional fee typically. But just make sure that you get the EIN set up, because if you're going to run payroll and you have staff on payroll, you're going to need an EIN. Next, obtain business licenses and permits for your LLC. There's a helpful SBA resource here that you can check out. But with this, I like to use the example of starting a brewery. Now, if you're brewing beer, distributing beer, and serving beer on premise, those are three different things that could potentially require different licenses and permits, and they can happen on the federal level, the state level, and the local level. What I would suggest is you can start on the local level. You can call the town hall and just say, hey, starting up this business, what kind of licenses and permits are we going to need? And that would be in the town that you are actually having the brewery at, okay? It is not going to be in Delaware, again, if you're using this from an out-of-state situation. The town doesn't care that you have a Delaware LLC. They want to make sure you have the proper licenses and permits for your business. Now, you can, again, search this in your home state as well, and then also on the federal level. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this and you feel a little uncertain, those LLC services available for you online, which we're going to get into in the next video, those will do the research for you as well for an additional fee, but make sure that you get set up correctly. Now, in the next video, again, we're going to be covering the state route if you go through online tools or a business attorney. We're going to talk about the fees associated with setting up your LLC. We're actually going to give you a cost calculator that we have here, and this you can use and see what it costs to own that LLC for the first 5 years. Then what we're going to do is get into the star ratings and explaining where these come from and comparing the different options for you. And then this is really, really important if you're doing a Delaware LLC, is understanding domestic versus foreign LLCs. We're going to get into that. And then we're also going to go over questions worth asking when you're getting your LLC set up of which path might be the best path for you. Because sometimes a business attorney does make sense despite being much more expensive, but other times going through the state website or online services is the way to go. So again, I would highly suggest you get this document for yourself. There'll be a link in the description below. And we're going to catch you in that next video and continue to work through this video so you're set up for success for your LLC. All right, we'll catch you in the next video.